CEO Myavana, and moderator Liane Jackson, Senior Law Editor, Forbes.
Just trying to make sure we're in the right order for seats. So if there's okay, good. Weren't sure. Welcome, everyone. I really am excited about this panel because, of course, AI is in fact affecting all of our lives. It's transforming industry, it's transforming business, it's transforming the world. And I have on my panel a great group of individuals who are at the convergence of AI and business. And we're here to talk about ethics and how AI can be used responsibly, how we can harness it properly, appropriately, but also what are the opportunities within this field for startups, for business, for job creation. So I'd like to quickly introduce the panel. We have on the far end Candace Mitchell, who is CEO of Myavana. I keep pronouncing that wrong, Myavana. Many of you might be familiar with that. I'm going to have them talk a little bit about their businesses themselves, but we also have Dr. Benjamin Harvey, who is the founder of AI Squared, which is a business that harnessed the intersection and of AI and how businesses can utilize that. We have also Brian Laung Aoaeh. He told me just to call him Brian, kind of like Beyonce. His last name's a little hard to pronounce. He said it's just one name, one word would be fine. I said, I think I should start with your last name as well. So Brian Aoaeh is he invests in the early stage startups who are involved in the industrial process of AI as well. And since I'm sort of mutilating exactly what their businesses do, I'm going to have Brian, you start with explaining better than I can about what you're working on.
So we invest in early stage startups that are transforming legacy industries through data and AI, advanced materials, advanced manufacturing, and next generation supply chains. And I'll get into the details of what that means later on.
Thank you. Nice summary. Dr. Harvey?
Yeah, so again, my name is Benjamin Harvey. I'm the founder of AI Squared. Real quick, a little bit about my background, and I'll jump into the actual business itself. But I'm a 3-time HBCU graduate, so I wanted to throw that out there, right? Which is very important to me coming back to an HBCU campus. I graduated from Mississippi Valley State University, then Bowie State University with a PhD, and then I went to Harvard MIT Joint Program for Health and Science Technology, ultimately worked at the National Security Agency, and then ultimately started a company called AI Squared. AI Squared helps organizations take AI insights and then integrate them into operational workflows. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Candace.
Hi, everyone. I'm Candace Mitchell. I'm the founder and CEO of Myavana. We are the inventors of Hair AI, in which we can analyze your unique hair strands and tell you which products are best for you to use. We pioneered, yes, ma'am, we got you. No more trial and error. We personalize your hair journey, give you the right regimens from all brands on the market, and we are the pioneers of the personalized hair care category. I went to Georgia Tech. I'm a computer scientist, so go Jackets. And we are transforming the hair industry through science and technology.
Thank you. So when we talk about AI, you know, there's opportunities within business, there's opportunities within education. The professions are utilizing AI from medical to legal. We're going to talk a little bit about how the ethics of that as well. But, you know, one thing that you hear in the news that's talked about a lot is the inherent bias that you can find in a lot of AI systems. Like, how are these being programmed? What are they learning? What's the data set? And how is this impacting especially communities of color and other minorities? And I just would like each of you, if you could, to speak a little bit about what you've seen and how you've tried to battle or push back against this, and what are the opportunities to try to change the landscape for how AI is managing the data sets, if there is a way.
Absolutely. This is extremely important because we need to be the ones that are creating and managing these data sets. We have the largest database of textured and multicultural hair care data, hair strands, hair product data, and it was actually built by Black women scientists and cosmetologists. And that was, yes. That was very important to me, and I was very intentional about that because hair, as an industry for our culture, you know, it's our crown and glory, right? And our hair types have not been represented well in retail, right? It took us over a decade to finally get the right products that we need to market, but also how is AI identifying the vast range of textures, types, and conditions? There are over 972 hair profiles of hair IDs, and we need to be represented in that, but also we need to be the ones to train these models. And so I believe that the more that we come to the development side, we can actually train the data that AI is now operating from.
Which is an interesting point because AI is scraping a lot of the data that already exists, and part of it is reinforcing existing bias. So if the information isn't already out there, then the models can't be trained properly. So to Candace's point in the business she's developing, which opens opportunities for all of you, everyone who's in the space, communities of color, to create new data sets, to put more data out there, and then it's just sort of a loop of opportunity and information for these systems. Does anyone else have thoughts on the bias that exists, the data set bias, the inherent biases that we're seeing?
So I was just looking across at the wall over there, and there's a poster that says, "Today's challenge is tomorrow's opportunity." And I think that is a concept that we should keep in mind. In what we do, the way that AI comes into play, and AI is shorthand for a group of technologies and approaches to using machines to help human beings make decisions. And Ben can talk about that in much more detail than probably anyone else on this panel. But the thing to understand, at least in industrial settings, is that there is no room for bias, right? If you're going to build a system that helps someone who runs a manufacturing plant run their plant with your software, that software has to reflect reality. And so in as much as there are systems that have a bias, that creates an opportunity for someone who is an entrepreneur to say, I'm going to build an alternative system that has much more fidelity with reality, and to bring that to market. And perhaps that means that you'll do better than the incumbent systems that currently exist.
Exactly, you know, whether it's the medical field, or you said the manufacturing, the security field. Of course, we know that a lot of times law enforcement are finding ways to integrate AI, but they're building on existing databases, from facial recognition to whatever else. But again, this is, we want to look at this challenge as also an opportunity, and it intersects with ethics. But the idea with ethics is, you know, who's regulating this, who's safeguarding it. But as entrepreneurs, you can kind of have sort of a built-in ethical base by making sure that you are broadening the scope in AI. So that kind of can bring in ethics in a backdoor sort of way. Ben, did you have anything?
Yeah, so when you think about models like OpenAI and ChatGPT, you know, the latest model 4.0, there's really kind of two different aspects of the training of those models. So a lot of people know about the extraction of text from the universe of data on the internet, and then being able to train that algorithm, right, with that universe of data, right? But there's also the reinforcement learning with human feedback step, right, which is extremely important, because if you think about the universe of data on the universe of information on the data, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation that these large language models are being trained with. So the important step is to make sure that the human feedback is actually providing expert level expertise that can help classify or approve or disprove some of the information before it's actually used to tune the model. So the reinforcement learning with human feedback is that step that OpenAI actually used, and they did 2 years of this before they released the first version of the GPT models. So in my next venture, so I took AI Squared from zero. Our last round of funding, we were close to $250 million in valuation. And my next venture that I'm working on is really focused on the human feedback piece, right? Because of how important it is for the data that is being used to train these models to be accurate, and also a representation of not just a sample of the population, but the entire population. And that's how you remove the bias in some of these data sets.
And to that point, I mean, again, entrepreneurs can only do so much. We can only go so far. You know, that's amazing what you're working on. But is there a broader sort of ethical safeguard that should be in place? Now, as AI, this has been a blazing, lightning speed adoption that we've had with AI from, you know, when first ChatGPT came out and out of nowhere. But now everyone's trying to harness the power of AI, every business, every educational institution, individuals. But should there be an overarching sort of authority monitoring what's going on? Is it only up to developers? Is it only up to individuals? Should the government be involved in this? How do we create some sort of framework to provide an ethical, to make more responsible use of these systems? Candace, I know you had some ideas on this.
Yeah, I have a bold idea about this. I really believe that as developers, we should be required to be licensed and take something similar like the Hippocratic Oath that doctors take that guides their ethical behavior in the practice of medicine and healthcare. And I really believe that we're at a point where we need to do the same because as developers, we can program things for better or for worse, to be honest. So the impacts and the effects of AI is really in the hands of the developer and what authority are you operating by, right? Right now, it's wide open. There are a lot of regulation work in place. But I think if we had something like that that's coded into how we develop and also put more into the infrastructure, the technical infrastructure of how we build, similar to cybersecurity, similar to data privacy, there should be a body of ethics that we are abiding by and also how it guides our frameworks and how we develop too.
And I think ultimately the regulation will catch up with the technology because invariably technology develops faster than regulators can keep up. And so I think as we continue to experience the effects of these technologies on society, I think we'll get to a point where the regulators realize that they have to put some guardrails in place. So I think that's going to happen. Now, whether it takes the form that Candace has described or whether it takes a different form, who knows? But I think ultimately there's going to be some regulation because the applications are so broad. The applications are so broad and so numerous that it's, in my mind, it's just necessary for there to be some regulation.
Yeah, Ben, did you have any thoughts on whether, I mean, you work for the NSA, which the ultimate, you know, sort of a spy agency in a way, but is there, but, you know, when we talk about, you know, we are currently in a deregulatory phase in our government, so to speak, to put it euphemistically. You know, there's a very laissez-faire. We're rolling back a lot of like regulation and things like that. And so in terms of trying the government or anybody in the, not this current administration, but like trying to put the brakes. But to your point, it does take time. I mean, this is, you know, very novel, you know, self-driving cars, that's a quasi-public-private sort of invention that's happening. But at some point, do we need some sort of administrative governmental regulation going on?
Yeah, so I worked at the National Security Agency for over a decade. And before I say this, is this how broadly is this recording actually going to be? But so when you think about an organization like NSA, there's a lot of mission-critical activities that, from a development perspective, you know, for an example, let's say, as a data scientist, you get a question, and they say, hey, if we need an answer as quickly as possible because we can't allow U.S. Air Force One to take off until we get the results of this analysis, right? So not only do you, I think Candace's point is so important, but not only do you need something of that nature, but you also need, you know, best practices.
Yes.
But also the underlying technology that can support those best practices. And, you know, organizations like OpenAI, they build in guardrails into, they do 3 levels of analysis. It's analysis of the prompt itself, it's analysis of the actual results with regards to the weights that are associated with the algorithm, and it's the output or the answer as well. So they're essentially baking in guardrails at every step, right? And what those guardrails do, is it stops the algorithm from, for an example, if you've ever asked OpenAI in a ChatGPT model a question like, what are your personal preferences and personal experiences? And it'll say, I'm an AI assistant, I don't have personal preferences and personal experiences, right? So that's an example of a guardrail that's been placed on the OpenAI side to filter out those types of questions so it can make sure that it doesn't provide you information that could legally, hurt them in the future when an AI algorithm said, personally, I feel you should do this, right? So as we think about it, best practices are important. Technology to support compliance of these algorithms inside of an ecosystem is also important. And being able to make sure that the data scientists who traditionally have, it's the wild, wild west for a lot of the tools that they use, but those best practices put in place really helps the organization understand how they build under a set of guardrails and guidelines.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to what social media claims that they have, the guardrails for minors, which isn't as strong or tough as it probably could be. The government has been looking into that. There's been lawsuits related to that. But with OpenAI, it's interesting that you can talk about what they've tried to put in place, because there's been a lot of complaints. There's questions from whether it is the government or the public, consumers, and concerns. So OpenAI is already trying to put some of that in place themselves. So that is self-regulation from an ethical standpoint. And I think one of the biggest regulatory environments in our country is liability, is being sued. If the government's not putting in the regulations or the guardrails, companies don't want to face multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar lawsuits. My background is in law, and we were talking a little bit before about how, in terms of licensing and that sort of thing, and having some sort of oath, certain professions do have requirements, like in the legal profession or the medical profession or accountants, where there are ethics codes that you have to, that you are ruled by. And so in law, they are looking at AI and how you can, as a lawyer, utilize it, what you have to disclose to your clients. These are some of the things that the legal profession is trying to regulate. So there's these little pockets of regulation happening. But again, I always find that lawsuits are the biggest deterrent for bad behavior in the United States. If the government doesn't get involved, unlike other countries, where they might have more regulations, here they're afraid of, what's going to happen ultimately if they do not do not employ best practices. Were you about to say something, or did you just look? Okay.
I was going to say one of the biggest conversations that's taking place in relation to artificial intelligence is how those technologies are going to affect supply chains. And supply chains are fundamentally the basis on which everything we do happens, right? They are the systems that enable production and consumption. And so I think the point you made about lawsuits is a great one. There's been research that suggests that as much news as there is about AI and how it's taking over everything in corporations, they do a number of pilots, and then things get stuck. And it's because corporations are not certain that these technologies and these systems are reliable enough for the mission-critical things that they need to do. And so I think there is, yes, governments at some stage need to put some guardrails in place, but corporations themselves, for self-preservation, are very, very careful about how they use these technologies.
Yes, and that's if that's the deterrent that we need to make sure that they're used responsibly, then that is something that you do kind of see being kind of ingrown into a lot of the development of these, because there was hesitation at first. A lot of companies didn't want to adopt it all. They would actually turn to the law firms, like, how should I even be utilizing this? Is it okay? But it's just exploding, so it's really hard to keep it a harness on what's going on. But in terms of opportunities in this field, I want to talk a little bit about, all of you guys have tech backgrounds. You have a computer science degree. Yours is cryptological computer science, math and physics. So you guys are all entrepreneurs in this field, investors in this field. What about, how do people who maybe don't have necessarily a tech background find a way to enter the AI space? There's nothing but opportunities with this new frontier, as Myavana has shown, is you can take a traditional field, hair care, and just kind of morph it into something that's new and bringing a whole different technological aspect to it.
Absolutely.
Is it possible to maybe partner up with somebody who has a technical background, or how can the average person sort of enter AI?
Yeah, honestly, I think the average person can learn how to code and become a developer. I mean, if third graders are learning how to code, you all can learn how to code too, right? It's actually not as hard as people think. I think a lot of people are intimidated, but if you just get your feet wet just a little bit and understand where is your place in this development army, because the fact of the matter is, it is a revolution that's taking place right now, and you have to find your position in it. Now, you can become a builder. You can, build your own company, right? I think that every business right now should think about how to transform your business into an AI company. How do you become the AI company of your market? Because that is the future. That is the like we say, Myavana is the future of hair care. So what industry do you represent the future of? You have the ability to now come to the forefront and take everything in your brain, right, your unique divine intelligence, and apply it to an industry that you're called to transform. And now you're an AI company that's creating the future, and this is multi-billion-dollar potential, okay? We're talking about multi-billion-dollar potential that we can tap into right now in our culture, everything that we know, our lived experiences, right? If you ask ChatGPT, no lived experiences. You have all the lived experiences, right? You can program that into your technology, right? You can code the future. It's already coded in your DNA. It's already coded in your purpose. So what does that look like as a technology, as a piece of software that now can become part of the supply chain of these industries? So we represent the consumer. We represent the unique hair profiles of every consumer around this world. So wouldn't companies find that valuable as now the new way to sell their products? So what we now created is personalized retail. So think about it, your genius can now become a product that transforms and becomes the future. And I think that's what everyone needs to step into. And yes, you can learn how to build that. You can learn how to code. I promise, if you lock in right now for the rest of the year, by 2026, you can pop out and be a developer and be a part of this AI army. And I think that we should all be thinking about that right now.
And to piggyback on Candace's point, I mean, it's becoming even easier to start that development process. So there's vibe coding it's a new kind of technology that allows you to, as simple as you can put in a prompt to ChatGPT, you can also put in a prompt to a vibe coding application like Lovable. And it allows you to take a prompt and to generate the first iteration of a web application just from the prompt itself.
What's the name of that? I'm sorry, what was the name of that platform?
It's called Lovable.
Oh, Lovable?
Lovable, yes. So when you think about vibe coding, and there's also a second step called remixing. So once you do the vibe coding step, and you get the first iteration of a web application, then you can start remixing the web application to add additional features based upon what you need, right? Or what your customer may need as well. So, start with ChatGPT, go to an AI assistant like Notebook LM, where you're adding, so ChatGPT has a little bit of memory that you can use, not much, right? And you probably run into the memory limits with ChatGPT, but if you use an AI assistant, you can bring in more and more context into how your LLM would provide a response. So you go from LLMs to AI assistants to co-pilots. Copilot like Microsoft Copilot, which tries to understand your behavior and then recommend different courses of action for you based upon your behavior. And then you can go to like an AI agent or agentic AI technologies. Now I was talking to Martin Schroeder, who's the CEO of Kyndryl last night, which is the IBM spinoff from a professional services perspective, and I think they have like 90,000 employees. And what he was telling me is that his employees right now that are actually coming into Kyndryl are coming in not just with themselves as an employee, but they have an army of either LLMs or agentic AI capabilities that are actually augmenting them, and they're becoming even more optimized. So we were discussing, hey, Ben, how can you help me leverage technology to understand not just what's happening in my AI ecosystem at Kyndryl, but like the army of other large language models and agents that they have working outside of the ecosystem that are providing insights that are going into my Kyndryl ecosystem. How do I manage all of these things? So the point is that this workforce that he's hiring has built an army of AI technologies that are supporting them in their day-to-day activities. So it's something that you all have to think about. If you're not leveraging the AI technologies and you're competing against individuals that are working in organizations that have an army of AI technologies that are supporting and optimizing how they do work, it puts you at a disadvantage. So it's even more important to start exploring those technologies.
Hope everyone had the step-by-step notes on what Ben here was saying to create. Go ahead, Brian.
So I think the first step is to decide if you are going to be a consumer of these technologies or if you're going to be a producer of these technologies. If you're going to be a consumer of these technologies, so say, for example, you run a business, and I'm now going to plug one of our startups because the founders are Georgia Tech alumni like Candace is. So let's say you run a business and local delivery would be useful, but you don't want to build this yourself. You can use ShipDay, and ShipDay can have you up and running in 5 minutes, no matter your background. Now, if you're going to be a producer of these technologies, then yes, you absolutely need to learn how to code. You should probably get some technical training to build on what Emma said from the session before us, right? Then it's about access to information. It's about access to the right people. It's about what you do with that information. It's about following up on the things that you stumble on and looking for resources to help you get going. And so I think that's the first place I would start. Decide if you're going to be a consumer or a producer, and then go from there.
Thank you. This has been really insightful, talking about how to leverage opportunities from either angle, consuming or producing, and how novel and transformative this AI has been all across the board. But to develop skill sets that you can use, again, whether you're using them to learn and to consume or to become entrepreneurs and produce. So we hope you got something out of this session about that, as well as how we can work to make AI a little bit more inclusive and less biased by participating more. Thank you so much to the audience, and thank you to the panel.